Gunsmoke, starring James Arness as Matt Dillon.
20 seasons, 635 episodes. And out of everyone who made Gunsmoke, exactly one person is still alive today. He named 2 of his sons after co-stars who are already gone. Gunsmoke outlasted 30 other westerns. It outlasted the whole genre. And almost nobody who made it is still here. The man who played Matt Dillon climbed onto a horse every week for 20 years. He did it on a leg that German machine gun fire had shredded at Anzio. It hurt every single time. The deputy with the famous limp was an Olympic-level decathlete. He invented that limp in the audition room. Then he couldn't stop doing it. The scruffy, illiterate hillbilly with the scratchy voice? He was a big band crooner. He replaced Frank Sinatra. The kindly bartender pouring drinks in the Long Branch was dying of lung cancer while he filmed those scenes. 5 of his episodes aired after his funeral. One of them carried a secret to her grave. It only came out because relatives sued over the money. And there is one man left. One. In 2026, he is 88 years old. One of the men he named a son after was already dead when that boy was born. 71 years after that first episode aired, one of them is still with us. Let's see what really happened. Before we ride into Dodge, tell me something in the comments. What's the one Gunsmoke moment you've never forgotten? Festus and Doc going at each other? Matt walking down that street in the opening? Drop it below. I read every one. And stay to the end. There's a record Gunsmoke still holds today, in 2026, that The Simpsons has never taken from it. Almost nobody knows it exists. Started on radio in 1952. A different Matt Dillon, a man named William Conrad, played him with a voice like gravel. Television came on September 10, 1955. John Wayne filmed a short introduction and told America to watch this new man. Then he stepped aside. From 1957 to 1961, Gunsmoke was the #1 show in the country. Nothing came close. But in 1967, CBS very nearly killed it. Ratings had slipped and executives decided 12 seasons was enough. What happened next has almost no parallel in television. Affiliate stations threatened to drop CBS programming. Viewers flooded the network with letters. A senator complained from the floor of Congress. The chairman of CBS reversed the decision and moved Gunsmoke to Monday nights. To make room, they canceled Gilligan's Island instead. Gunsmoke went straight back into the top 10 and ran another 8 years. And then, in 1975, CBS killed it without warning. There was no finale. There was no goodbye. The cast found out it was over from the trade papers. 20 years, and they didn't even get a last episode. But the man at the center of all of it was already carrying something heavier than the audience ever knew. James Arness. As Marshal Matt Dillon, James Arness was born James King Arness on May 26, 1923, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Norwegian family on his father's side. His father sold medical supplies. His mother wrote a newspaper column. He wanted to be a fighter pilot. He was turned down for being too tall. He was 6'6". The cockpit was never going to happen. So the army made him a rifleman instead. He trained in Georgia, then shipped to North Africa. He joined the 3rd Infantry Division just in time for Anzio. The landing came on January 22, 1944. 10 days later, German machine gun fire tore through his right leg and foot. They evacuated him to Iowa. Surgery after surgery. He came home with a Bronze Star, a Purple Heart, and a leg that never worked right again. Here's the part that changes everything. He was 32 when he became Marshal Matt Dillon. The most unbreakable lawman on television. And for the next 20 years, every time he climbed onto that horse, his leg reminded him of Anzio. Think about what that means. The most iconic image in 20 years of American television is that enormous man riding into Dodge. He was in pain the whole time, every week, for 2 decades. Now the casting story, because you've probably heard it wrong. The legend says John Wayne was offered Matt Dillon and turned it down. That story is everywhere. It isn't true. Wayne didn't turn the part down. He was never asked. Charles Marquis Warren produced that first season and made the casting decisions himself. He said flatly that the part was never offered to Wayne. He said that if he'd asked Wayne to play a television marshal, Wayne would have broken his neck. What actually happened is better. Wayne recommended Arness, and Arness turned it down.
Look, don't worry about your job, because that'll be there anytime you want it.
A film director had warned him that a failed television series would end his movie career. So he said no. Wayne called him in personally. Arness was under contract to Wayne's own company. Wayne told him he'd be crazy not to take it. Years later, Wayne offered him a role in The Alamo. Arness said no. He wouldn't leave Gunsmoke. Before Dodge City, his biggest role was the monster in The Thing from Another World. Producers kept casting him as a heavy because of his size. Then Gunsmoke made him the most trusted man in America. Off camera, he was intensely private. He avoided Hollywood parties and almost never gave interviews. Amanda Blake once said something about him that says everything. She'd worked beside him for 16 years, and she didn't really know him. And he never once discussed the worst thing that ever happened to him. Gunsmoke's final first-run episode aired on March 31, 1975. 6 weeks later, his daughter Jenny Lee died in Malibu. It was May 12, 1975. She was 24 years old, 11 days short of her 25th birthday. Her death was ruled a suicide. In 6 weeks, he lost the job he'd held for 20 years. Then he lost his only daughter. He never talked about it publicly. Not once, in 36 years. Reporters asked. He wouldn't answer. His former wife, Virginia, died roughly 2 years after their daughter. His adopted son, Craig, a photographer for National Geographic, died in 2004. His younger brother, the actor Peter Graves, from Mission Impossible, died in March 2010. James Arness died on June 3, 2011. He was 88. He died in his sleep at home in Brentwood. His business manager said there was no disease. He'd simply been fading. And then something arrived that nobody expected. He had written a letter. He left instructions that it only be published after he was gone. That same day, his wife posted it on his website. It began simply. He said he'd had a wonderful life, and had been blessed with so many loving people. A man who refused interviews for 50 years made absolutely sure he got the last word. And he wasn't the only person on that set keeping something back until the very end.
And starring James Arness as Matt Dillon.
Amanda Blake as Kitty Russell. Amanda Blake wasn't born Amanda Blake. She was born Beverly Louise Neal on February 20, 1929, in Buffalo, New York. Before Hollywood, she worked as a telephone operator, $40 a paycheck. That job is the reason she became a star. Sitting at a switchboard all day sharpened her diction. Clean diction got her radio work. Radio work got her noticed. MGM signed her, renamed her, and marketed her as the next Greer Garson. Amanda Blake was a studio invention. She was 26 when she walked into the Long Branch Saloon. Kitty Russell was something television had barely tried.
Oh, hello, Miss Kitty.
A woman who owned her own business. Who ran a room full of men. Who never needed rescuing. 19 seasons. More than 400 episodes. She said the company felt like family. After her divorce in 1956, she'd come to the set on days she wasn't working. It felt like home. She left in 1974, 1 year before the end. She was exhausted, the commute from her Arizona ranch was brutal, and she'd had enough. She told the Los Angeles Times she was tired, and it was time to go. Then the other life began. She raised cheetahs. Actual cheetahs. She and her husband ran one of the first successful captive cheetah breeding programs in America. She reportedly kept 32 animals on her property in Phoenix, including a lion. She helped found an animal welfare league in Arizona, and she smoked 2 to 3 packs of cigarettes a day. The cancer came for her mouth. She had surgery. She survived it, and instead of hiding, she went out and told everybody. She became a national spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. She received its Courage Award from President Reagan, in person, at the White House. Then the second illness came, and this one she kept. Roughly a year before she died, Amanda Blake was diagnosed with AIDS. This was the 1980s. She told almost nobody. She spent her final years living in a small building on an animal sanctuary near Galt, California. Her closest friend, Pat Derby, later said those 2 years were the happiest of her life. Amanda Blake died on August 16, 1989, in Sacramento. She was 60. The world was told it was cancer, and here is where her story becomes something much larger than one actress. She left her entire estate to that animal sanctuary. Distant relatives, an aunt and 2 cousins, sued. They claimed she hadn't been of sound mind when she wrote the will. That lawsuit forced her executor to prove she'd been mentally competent, and there was only one way to prove it. AIDS attacks the immune system. It doesn't take your mind. So according to accounts of the case, her closest friends said it out loud. Amanda Blake died of AIDS. She'd kept that secret because in 1989 it would have finished her. Then it came out anyway, to settle an argument over money. Money she'd left to animals. That November, her own physician confirmed it publicly. He said she had throat cancer, but that the cancer was not what killed her. Her privacy was destroyed by an argument over money she'd left to animals. And in 1989, when America was still whispering about this disease, Miss Kitty's name forced it into the daylight. Today that sanctuary still runs a 100-acre refuge that carries her name. Watch how she holds a room. Kitty Russell was never rescued and never apologized. In 1955, that was almost unheard of on television. She hid an illness from the audience. So did the man playing the town doctor.
I told you. You make me sick.
Milburn Stone, as Doc Adams Milburn Stone was born on July 5, 1904, in Burton, Kansas. A Kansas farm boy grew up to play the doctor of Dodge City, Kansas. That's roughly 100 miles from where he was raised. He was reportedly offered an appointment to the United States Naval Academy. He turned it down to be an actor. He started on stage at 15 in a Kansas tent show. Vaudeville in the 20s, a song and dance act, Broadway. Then Universal signed him in 1943. He was 51 when he became Doc. 20 seasons, more than 600 episodes out of 635. In 20 years, Milburn Stone missed 7. Here's why he missed them. In 1971, between seasons, Milburn Stone had a heart attack. He needed open heart surgery, so the writers wrote it in. Doc leaves Dodge after losing a patient. He's gone east to Baltimore to sharpen his medical skills. A replacement doctor sets up in his office. Sit with that. America watched a story about Doc going away to learn more about the human heart. At the same time, the man playing him was on a table. Surgeons were repairing his. Almost nobody watching knew. If you want to see it, look up the episode. It's called New Doctor in Town, and it aired in October of 1971. Then find the one where he comes back. It's The Bullet, Part 1, broadcast on November 29th. 6 weeks off. Then Doc walks back into Dodge. Acting ran in the family. His uncle Fred Stone was a genuine Broadway star. His own brother wrote 3 episodes of Gunsmoke. He won an Emmy for Doc in 1968. He never left the show. He retired when it ended. Milburn Stone died of a heart attack on June 12, 1980. He was 75, 9 years after the first one, 5 years after Dodge City closed. He turned down the Naval Academy to play pretend, and he became the most trusted doctor in America.
I've seen an awful lot of things happen in my life, Matt, just because somebody believed they would.
Dennis Weaver as Chester Good. Dennis Weaver was born on June 4, 1924, in Joplin, Missouri. He flew for the Navy in the Second World War. Then he became a world-class athlete. In 1948, Weaver competed at the United States Olympic trials in the decathlon. He finished 6th. Only the top 3 made the team. The teenager who beat him was a 17-year-old named Bob Mathias, who went on to win Olympic gold. Weaver said he did so poorly that he decided to stay in New York and try acting instead. That decision produced one of the most famous walks in television history. And it was a complete fabrication. Here's how it happened. He was 31, auditioning for the part of Matt Dillon's assistant.
That's my name, Chester.
A producer said the sidekick needed something physical, something that made him visibly lesser than Dillon. So Weaver invented a bad leg on the spot. A man with near-Olympic speed. He got the job. The limp stayed 9 years. Then came the part nobody expects. He couldn't get rid of it. On other productions, when a director called action, Weaver would automatically start limping. A colleague later said it took him months to walk normally on camera again. He joked about it decades later. He said if he'd known he'd be doing it for 9 years, he might have thought differently. He left in 1964, at the absolute peak of the show. He said he'd used up everything the character had. He wanted to be a leading man, not a sidekick. Then he waited 6 years for it to pay off. His first solo series lasted 1 season. His second worked. Then in 1970 he finally became a star in his own right. He played Sam McCloud, a New Mexico lawman dropped into New York City. 2 Emmy nominations. He called it the most satisfying role of his career. He was also the twitchy motel clerk in Orson Welles' Touch of Evil. And he was the driver being hunted by a truck in Duel, Steven Spielberg's very first film. Off-screen, he became something else entirely. President of the Screen Actors Guild. A vegetarian and environmental campaigner decades before that was normal. He ran a charity that fed 150,000 people a week in Los Angeles County. He spoke at the United Nations and before Congress. And he built a solar-powered house in Colorado out of recycled tires and cans. He was married to Jerry, his childhood sweetheart, for 61 years. Dennis Weaver died on February 24, 2006, at his home in Ridgway, Colorado. He was 81. Cancer. James Arness said it was a big personal loss. They'd been friends since their joint screen test in 1955. 51 years. An Olympic-level athlete faked a disability to get a job. He performed it for 9 years. Then he couldn't stop. But the man who eventually replaced him at Matt Dillon's side was hiding something stranger still.
No, that there comes from sparking on a riverbank.
Ken Curtis as Festus Haggen. Now the one that stuns people. Ken Curtis was born Curtis Wayne Gates on July 2, 1916 in Lamar, Colorado. He grew up in a jail. His father ran for sheriff of Bent County and won. The jail took up the entire second floor of the building. The family lived underneath it, and Ken's mother cooked the prisoners' meals. That building still stands in Los Alamos, Colorado. And Festus came out of that childhood. The character was reportedly patterned on a real man, a local they called Cedar Jack. He cut cedar fence posts for a living. He kept ending up drunk in the sheriff's cells. Ken Curtis built television's most beloved deputy out of a man he watched being locked up by his own father. But that's not the shocking part. In 1941, Curtis was a big band singer. He joined the Tommy Dorsey Orchestra as its vocalist. He replaced Frank Sinatra. Sinatra was on his way out of that band to go solo. Curtis was the man brought in to sing in his place. Dorsey is the one who told him to change his name. Curtis Gates became Ken Curtis on a band leader's advice. Then he joined the Sons of the Pioneers, the greatest Western vocal group in history, and sang lead. A founding member of that same group had been a young man named Leonard Sly. He left, changed his name to Roy Rogers, and became a legend. That scratchy, nasal Festus voice? Completely fake. Ken Curtis's real voice was a smooth baritone. He married John Ford's daughter and became part of Ford's stock company. He's in The Searchers. He's in Rio Grande. He's in The Horse Soldiers. Then he showed up on Gunsmoke and a couple of other roles before anyone thought of Festus. He first played him in an episode called Us Haggens. Go find it. You'll see the whole character arrive fully formed. He played Festus for 11 years and 304 episodes. More than any other deputy Matt Dillon ever had. Ken Curtis died on April 28, 1991. He was 74. He died in his sleep. He was cremated, and his ashes were scattered over the Colorado flatlands he came from. There's a statue of him as Festus, standing in Clovis, California. The illiterate hillbilly was a crooner who replaced Sinatra and married into Hollywood royalty. Every single thing about Festus was invented.
Wooly for you, Mr. Samuel. Get them shovels. Get them on over here.
Glenn Strange as Sam the bartender. You know his face. You may not know his name, and you almost certainly don't know what else he was. Glenn Strange was born on August 16, 1899 in New Mexico Territory. That's 13 years before New Mexico was even a state. According to his own studio biography, he'd been a professional boxer before acting. He was also a rancher, a rodeo rider, a deputy sheriff, and a police officer. Then in 1944, a makeup artist at Universal looked at his face and his height and had an idea. Glenn Strange played Frankenstein's monster. The same hands that poured drinks in the Long Branch had brought a monster to life. He took over the role after Boris Karloff walked away from it. He played the creature in 3 Universal films. One of them was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. The man serving beer in Dodge City was the Frankenstein monster. He played Sam Noonan for around 12 years and 222 episodes. A gentle, steady presence in the background of hundreds of hours of television. In 1972, at 73, he was diagnosed with lung cancer. He kept working. He filmed as long as his body allowed. He never spoke about it publicly. Glenn Strange died on September 20, 1973. He was 74. 5 of his episodes had already been filmed. They aired after he was buried. For months, America was watching a dead man pour drinks. His final appearance aired on November 26, 1973, more than 2 months after his death. And the title of that episode matters more than you'd guess. It was called The Hanging of Newly O'Brien. Remember that name. We come back to it. One more thing about Glenn Strange. A colleague who was there told this story years later. While he was bedridden and dying, his friend Lon Chaney Jr. passed away. A television network couldn't find anyone willing to go on air and speak about him. Strange was told nobody would speak for Chaney. He said 2 words. I will. He got out of that bed, went to the studio, and did it. He died about 6 months later.
How well do you know Ed Carstairs?
Burt Reynolds, as Quint Asper. For 3 seasons, from 1962 to 1965, Dodge City had a blacksmith named Quint Asper. 50 episodes. The blacksmith was Burt Reynolds. The part only existed because Dennis Weaver wanted out. Producers built a new character to fill the space Chester was leaving. Reynolds reportedly beat more than 300 other actors to it. Watch the episode Quint Asper Comes Home. It's the first time most of America ever saw him. He left in 1965. He told the New York Times he'd served his apprenticeship and there wasn't room for two leading men. But somebody pushed him out the door first. Reynolds shot a film during a summer break and started getting noticed. By the accounts from that set, Milburn Stone saw exactly what was happening. He told him bluntly to get out of here. Doc Adams told Burt Reynolds to leave Gunsmoke, so he did. Within a few years, he was one of the biggest box office draws on the planet. Deliverance, The Longest Yard, Pokey and the Bandit, Boogie Nights, an Oscar nomination at 61. Burt Reynolds died on September 6, 2018. Heart attack. He was 82. The biggest movie star Gunsmoke ever produced got that job because one man quit. He got the career because another man told him to go.
You might go out and arrest somebody and drag them back in here and stick them in the cell till they rot.
Roger Ewing, as Thad Greenwood. Between Burt Reynolds leaving and the last deputy arriving, there was one more. Roger Ewing was born January 12, 1942, in Los Angeles. Here's how he got there. As a high school senior, he played Chester in a school variety show parody of Gunsmoke. Dennis Weaver's character. He watched The Real Thing every Saturday night. A few years later, he was standing in Dodge City for real. He first appeared in a one-off part in February 1965. Producers liked him so much they wrote a character just for him. Thad Greenwood, the son of an Oklahoma sheriff, who arrives chasing the men responsible for his father's death. With no family left, Matt asks him to stay on as a deputy. Ewing said the cast basically adopted him. He played Thad for about 50 episodes across 2 seasons, then left in 1967. And then he did something almost nobody does. He walked away from acting entirely. He picked up a camera instead and made his living as a professional photographer for decades. Mexico, Europe, Russia, the South Pacific. He never married. He kept the quietest possible profile for more than 50 years. Roger Ewing died on December 18, 2025, in Morro Bay, California. He was 83, 25 days short of his 84th birthday. His death wasn't even reported until January 2026. 3 weeks later. That's how private he'd stayed. And his death is the reason this video exists. Because when Roger Ewing died, one man was left.
Well, I've been in a few. One I couldn't go around them.
Buck Taylor, as Newly O'Brien Buck Taylor, was born Walter Clarence Taylor III on May 13, 1938 in Hollywood. His father was the character actor Dub Taylor, who guest starred on Gunsmoke himself. Before acting, Buck was a competitive gymnast. He was reportedly sponsored to attend the United States Olympic trials. He didn't qualify for the 1960 games. Look at that, Chester and Newly, the first deputy and the last one, both of them nearly Olympians. He'd already appeared on Gunsmoke once, playing an outlaw. Then he came back as a guest in season 13. The producers liked him. They tested him for a gunsmith named Newly O'Brien. He stayed until the very last episode in 1975. Now the thing that makes him different from every other name in this video. He named his second son Matthew, after James Arness, after Matt Dillon. He said so himself, in writing. He named his third son Cooper Glenn, after Glenn Strange. Now do the arithmetic. Cooper was born in 1975. Glenn Strange died in September of 1973. Glenn Strange never knew. The child who carries his name arrived 2 years after he was buried. And remember that final Glenn Strange episode, the one that aired after his death? The Hanging of Newly O'Brien, named for Buck Taylor's character. These two men are tied together by an episode title and by a little boy's name. Buck's own life hasn't been gentle. In 1994, he reportedly lost his eldest son Adam in a highway accident in Montana. It happened 3 days before Adam's 28th birthday. That same year, he lost his father. They'd worked together on Tombstone the year before. He became a serious Western watercolor painter. He's the official artist for rodeos, including the Pendleton Roundup. He painted a portrait of James Arness. He stayed close to Arness until the end. When Arness died in 2011, Taylor is reported to have spoken at his funeral. He said James Arness was still his hero. There's something almost unbearable about his Yellowstone exit. Emmett Walsh dies peacefully on screen, out in open country, after helping an old friend. Then, in 2018, a whole new generation found him. Yellowstone cast him as Emmett Walsh, an old rancher and a friend of John Dutton's. Millions of people watched him every week. Almost none of them knew what they were looking at. The last surviving deputy of Dodge City, sitting in a Montana pasture. Today, in 2026, Buck Taylor is 88 years old. He's still painting. He's still turning up at Western art shows and signing for people. He is the last living member of the Gunsmoke cast. And the man who's left is the one who named his children after the men who are gone. The bonus fact. Here's the one I promised you. You've probably heard that The Simpsons broke Gunsmoke's record. It's true. On April 29, 2018, The Simpsons aired its 636th episode and passed Gunsmoke's total. But there's a record Gunsmoke still holds. Nobody has touched it. For its first 6 years, Gunsmoke was a half-hour show. Then it went to a full hour and stayed there for 14 seasons. Added up, by one industry count, Gunsmoke produced roughly 518 hours of television. The Simpsons, at the moment it took the episode record, had produced about 317. So The Simpsons has the episodes. Gunsmoke still has the hours. More hours of scripted primetime drama than any show in American history. That means written, scripted evening drama. Not news. Not sport. Not reality. Still true today. And it remains, by a distance nobody is ever going to close, the longest-running Western ever made. So that's Gunsmoke, 71 years later. Milburn Stone in 1980. Glenn Strange in 1973. Amanda Blake in 1989. Ken Curtis in 1991. Dennis Weaver in 2006. James Arness in 2011. Burt Reynolds in 2018. Roger Ewing this past December. One left. 88 years old, in Texas, with a paintbrush. 20 seasons. 635 episodes. One man. So here is my advice. Go watch it again. Not a clip, not a compilation. Go find the real thing, because almost all of it is out there and easy to track down. And watch for the faces. Over 20 years, Gunsmoke put half of Hollywood through Dodge City before anybody knew their names. Harrison Ford, Jodie Foster, Kurt Russell, Ron Howard, Bruce Dern, John Voight, Sam Elliott. You'll spot somebody famous in almost every episode. It turns into a game. Watch New Doctor in Town. Doc goes east to learn more about the human heart. The man playing him was having his own repaired. Watch Us Haggans, and listen to a Sinatra replacement pretend he can't read. Watch The Jailer, and see Bette Davis take the whole show apart. Watch The Hanging of Newly O'Brien, and count the weeks since the bartender was buried. You will not see the same show you saw before, I promise you that. Now tell me in the comments, which one hit you hardest? Was it Arness on that leg? Was it Amanda Blake's secret? Or was it Buck Taylor naming a child after a man who never got to hear about it? Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. That's the whole channel, casts you grew up with, and what actually happened to them. And next week, we're leaving the West and heading to a farm. Green Acres, 1965. The cast, then and now. One of them hid something from the entire country while that show was on the air. I'll see you in Hooterville.